All right. All right. Looks like everybody is in. So good evening, parents. Welcome to our FSA Parent Night. Ms. Feliciano, who is our testing coordinator, is going to share information that is important for all of our students as they're preparing for this upcoming testing season. Myself and Ms. Hernandez, our Dean of Curriculum, will also be on to answer questions through Ms. Feliciano's presentation. So if while she's talking, you come up with any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. And then at the end, we will address any last minute questions. Again, this is for those parents who have students in grades 3 through 8. Any student in grades 3 through 8 will be those students that will be testing in the upcoming season. And we want to make sure that you guys are aware of those testing dates and all that FSA testing entails. So I'm going to turn it over to our testing coordinator and curriculum resource teacher, Ms. Feliciano. Wait, you're muted. There you go.
All right, thanks guys for joining us. I'm just going to jump right in. So we are here to talk about the FSA, and here we go. Well, no, it's not. There we go. So our agenda tonight. So what are the FSA assessments? The subjects and grades assessed, the testing schedule, what does it look like, the test timing for each test, test design and test item types, and then the state science assessment. And then we'll also provide some helpful resources that you can use at home. Can you hear me okay?
There's something in the background.
Yeah, they're cleaning. So it's very loud, so sorry.
Okay.
Just want to make sure you can hear me. All right, so what are the Florida standards? The Florida standards were adopted in 2014 in English language arts and mathematics to help prepare Florida students for success in college, career, and in life by emphasizing analytical thinking skills. The FSA provides a more authentic assessment of the Florida standards than prior tests, and that students will be asked to create graphs, interact with test content, and write and respond in different ways than on traditional tests. So the question types will assess students' higher order thinking skills in keeping with the higher expectations of the Florida standards. So test logistics on the test day, ensure that your student arrives to school on time. Testing will begin promptly at 8:30. So if you're dropping them off at 8:30, they're not going to be able to test. They will be sent to the tardy room and have to do it on a makeup day. So please, please, please make sure your student is here on time. It helps with a smooth testing day. And then make sure all electronics are turned off once entering the building. This is very important. I know electronics, smartwatches, phones are super popular with our kids these days, but earbuds, smartwatches, phones, they're not allowed in the testing room. They need to be completely turned off and put in their backpack, or better yet, don't even bring them to school that day. So if they do have them on them, regardless if they have them on or not, it does cause for a validation of their test and a possibility of invalidating the rest of the classroom. So please reiterate it multiple times with your students to make sure they turn it off or don't even bring it to school. Turn it off, put it in their backpack, and keep it there until the end.
Ms. Feliciano, will you explain what that means when their test is invalidated?
So invalidating a test, that means that your test will not be scored and the student will not receive a score for their FSA test. So if it's like an EOC, which is part of your grade, that's going to be a big drop in your grade if you don't get like the EOC test. So that's what invalidating means. And so if you have the phone in there, you could potentially invalidate the entire class for just having your phone in your pocket or wherever the students choose to keep it, or even their smartwatch. And that's a big deal when you have to invalidate an entire classroom, because none of those kids will receive a score. So what subjects and grades are tested? So for elementary, all tests will be on paper. They're paper-based. Grades 3 through 5 will test ELA. Grades 4 through 5 will test writing, and the student must take both the writing and the reading test to receive an FSA ELA score. So they cannot take one or the other. They must take both of them. Grades 3 through 5 will take mathematics, and then just grade 5 in elementary will take the science assessment. In middle school, all 6th grade tests will be on paper. All 7th and 8th grade tests will be computer-based except for 8th grade science. So 8th grade science is the only one that's on paper. Grades 6 through 8, ELA. Grades 6 through 8 will test writing. And again, they must take both to receive a score. Grade 6 through 8 mathematics and algebra 1. We have grade 7 will test civics, and grade 8 will test science as well as biology for the EOC. So if you have students that are 6th graders in 7th or 8th grade math, then they will be testing on the computer for that specific math test, but for any other test, they'll be testing on paper. So these are the testing dates this year. Grade 3 is testing their ELA test April 5th and 6th. We do test them, the state tests them very early, so we can get their scores back because they are a mandatory retention year. Grades 4 through 8 will test the writing on April 7th. And then on grades 4 through 8, they'll test ELA in May, so May 2nd and 3rd. And then all math, grades 3 through 8 will test May 6th. Grade 5 will test science May 12th and 13th. 7th grade civics will test May 12th. And then 8th grade science and biology will also test on May 12th. And in between that, there will be makeup days as well. So test session links by subjects. For ELA, for the writing test, for grades 4 through 8, they are administered in one session and it's 120 minutes long. For the reading test, they are administered in 2 sessions over 2 different days. So you'll take session 1 on day 1 and session 2 on day 2. They will not take 2 sessions in one day. And at the bottom, it breaks it apart by grade level, by how long they get for each session. So grades 3 through 5 will get 80 minutes per session, and grades 6 through 8 will get 85 minutes per session. And if you see CBT listed anywhere on the page, that means it's computer-based testing. So grades 7th and 8th will be testing on the computers. And then grades 4 through 8, 120 minutes, the writing test. And again, all 7th and 8th graders will be required to type their essays into the on the computers. For mathematics, the grades 3 through 5 assessments are administered in 2 sessions over 2 days. So that's similar to ELA. The grade 6 mathematics assessment is administered in 3 sessions over 2 days. So this one's slightly different. So session 1 will be administered on day 1, and then sessions 2 and 3 will be administered on day 2. This is the same for grades 7 through 8. So down at the bottom, grades 3 through 5 get 80 minutes per session. Grade 6 gets 60 minutes per session. So on day 1, they'll test session 1, 60 minutes. On day 2, they'll test session 2 and 3, 60 minutes apiece, totaling 120 minutes for both sessions. And that is the same thing for 7th and 8th grade. For science, grades 5 and 8 are administered in 2 80-minute test sessions. Grade 5 is given over 2 separate days, and grade 8 is administered in 1 day. So for grade 5, you get 80 minutes, 2 sessions, 2 days. Grade 8, you get 80 minutes per session on 1 day. So it's 160 minutes for the whole test. For FSA EOC assessments, they're administered in 2 sessions over 2 days. So any student who has not completed a session by the end of the allotted time may continue working. However, each session may last no longer than half the length of a typical school day. So for Algebra 1 and Geometry EOC, you get 90 minutes per session, but if they need more time after the 90 minutes, they're allowed to take up the length of a half a school day. After that, they have to turn in the test. For Biology 1 and Civics administrations, any student not finished by the end of the 160-minute test session may continue working. However, testing must be completed within the same school day. So for Biology and Civics, they have 160 minutes. If they need more time, they'll have till the end of the school day to complete that. So next, we're going to go into the test design. So this is how the test is broken apart by percentage and by the different domains that we teach throughout the year. So ELA reading content categories for grades 3 through 5, actually, they're both the same for grades 3 through 8, all of them the same. This is the approximate percentage of the raw score points for each category. So it is 50% literature, 50% informational text, and then it's broken apart by each domain. Key ideas and details, 15 to 25%, craft and structure, 25 to 35%. So that's one of the larger buckets. Integration of knowledge and ideas, 20 to 30%, also a very large bucket of questions. Language and editing, 15 to 25%, and then text-based writing for grades 3 3 through 5 is determined each year. It's either opinion or narrative. And then for the middle school grades for writing, it's determined also each year. We don't ever know. And it's either argumentative or informative. And there's typically 56 to 60 questions on the ELA assessment over both sessions. So they'll do half on day 1 and the other half on day 2. So this is just an example of what the writing prompt would look like. They can be provided 2 to 3 passages that they have to read through and then create an essay based on the 3 passages. So as you can see, it says write an informative essay about the effects wild animals and humans have on each other when they live in the same area. So they're going to use this to create their essay. Scoring the writing. So grade 4 and 5 writing component contributes to 10 raw score points to the overall FSA ELA total score. So the raw score is not the most important score when considering a student's overall performance. So we want to look at the whole picture rather than just specifically writing. And then FSA, like other Florida statewide assessments, past and present, is not scored using a % correct or number correct scoring method. Students correctly answering the more difficult items receive more credit than the students answering less challenging items. So it's not fully about how many they get correct, but how many of the difficult questions they get correct, they get rewarded more points for that. So in other words, the scoring model involves both the number and the difficulty of questions a student answers correctly. So test item types in ELA, we have multiple choice, and then 25 to 50% of the test is composed of enhanced items, which include multi-select, selectable text, multi-part, table match, and editing task choice, which we're going to go over what those look like, what each of those mean. So multiple choice is just choose the best answer from the answer choices and fill in one bubble for the correct answer. That would be multiple choice. Multi-select, you choose more than one correct answer from the answer choices and fill in the bubbles for more than one correct answer. So like in the example, it's asking to select 2 reasons. So in order to get that question correct, they will need to select 2 reasons and the 2 correct reasons, not just one. Selectable text, so they'll fill in the bubbles before the phrase or sentence that you might want to select. This type of item will ask students to select 1 or more phrases or sentences from a passage. So read the item carefully to know how to respond. So it's asking them to fill in the circle before the sentence from the passage 2 that shows why the man believes that his cheeses can bring themselves to the market. Multi-part questions. There's 2 parts of the item. There's a part A and a part B, and they may either be multiple choice, which is 1 answer, or multi-select, which they have to select more than 1 answer, or selectable text, 1 or more answers. So you have your part A here, and then part B, and the questions all go together. So it could be supporting your answer from part A, you answer in part B. And then table match, students will be required to match the information from each row to the corresponding column. Read the instructions carefully to know how to respond to the item. So this is a sequencing question. So you would, what happened first, what happened next, what happened last, and they would have to fill in the correct answer in the table. And then an editing task, students will read a passage with several underlined words or phrases that may be incorrect. Following the passage, editing task items will ask students to review a sentence with an underlined word or phrase and to fill in one bubble to correct the sentence. If the sentence is already correct and requires no change, fill in the bubble marked correct as is. So they'll have to use the passage to make the editing corrections. All right, so test design for math in grades 3 through 5. So in grades 3, it is broken apart into 3 separate domains: operations, algebraic thinking, and numbers in base 10. That is 48% of the test. So that is the largest domain tested in 3rd grade. Next is numbers and operations. So fractions, that type of stuff. That is only 17%. And then measurement, data, and geometry is 35%. And usually there's typically about 60 to 64 questions on their test. Grade 4, it's broken apart into 4 different domains: operations and algebraic thinking, 21%, numbers and operations in base 10, 21%, numbers and operations fractions, 25%, and then measurement, data, and geometry, 33%, which is going to be their largest domain tested. And then grade 5, again, it goes back to 3 domains. Operations, algebraic thinking, and fractions is 39%, which is their largest domain tested. Numbers and operations in base 10, 28%, and measurement data and geometry, 33%. So your test design in grade 6 through 8 math. It's broken to 5 for 6th grade, 5 different domains: ratio and proportional relationships, 15%, expressions and equations, 30%, which is their largest domain tested. So that's pretty, we need to focus on that. Geometry, 15%, statistics and probability, 19%, and the number system, 21%. And there's typically 62 to 66 questions on their math test. 7th grade, it's broken apart. Ratio and proportional relationships, 25%, expressions and equations, 21, geometry, 23, statistics and probability, 16, and the number system, 15. And then for 8th grade, it's, they have different domains. Expressions and equations is 30%, making it their largest domain of questions. Functions, 25%, geometry, 27, and statistics and probability, and the number system, 18%. The Algebra 1 EOC reporting category, algebra and modeling, 41%, functions and modeling, 40, and statistics and the number system, 19. And there's usually 64 to 68 questions on their assessment. So different math item types in the math FSA is multiple choice, multi-select, table match, response grid, and editing task choice. So we'll go over what that looks like in the math test versus the reading test. Multiple choice, again, is just choose the best answer and fill in one of the bubble for the correct answer. Multi-select, you're choosing more than one answer. So here it's asking you to select all the expressions that have the same value. So you need to select all that makes the same value. Table match, students will use the information in the table to provide your answer, and then you'll be required to match the information from each row to the corresponding column. So it's asking you to match each number to the value of the number rounded to the nearest 10. So 181 is rounded to the nearest 10 of 180. They would bubble in A. Response grids. Work the problem and find the answer. You're going to write your answer in the answer boxes at the top of the grid. Write your answer with the first digit in the left answer box or with the last digit in the right answer box. Write only one digit or symbol in each answer box and do not leave a blank answer box in the middle. And be sure to write a decimal point or fraction bar in the answer box if it is part of the answer. So this kind of, they're going to write their answer here. They're going to put a decimal or a fraction if it requires one. Fill in the corresponding bubble to that. So this is more examples of how you could fill in the response grids. This is the correct way. This is the incorrect way. And again, this would be a type of question that they would have to fill in the response grid for, writing the fraction of point A on the number line. Editing task choice. So again, it's going to provide you choosing the correct word or phrase to fill in each blank in the sentence. This is what it would look like in the math test if they had one of these questions in there. And then the test design for science. So for grade 5, it is broken apart in 4 different domains: nature of science, 17%, earth and space science, 29%, physical science, 29%, and life science, 25%. And there's about 60 to 66 questions in their 5th grade science test. This is incorrect. This is supposed to say 8th grade here. So for 8th grade, nature of science, 19%, earth and space science, 27%, physical science, 27%, and life science, 27%. So they're pretty equally laid out in questions with the exception of nature of science. Test design for biology. It's into 3 different reporting categories: molecular and cellular biology, 35%, classification and evolution, 25%, organisms and populations and ecosystems, 40%. So test design for science, all the items on the science and biology test are multiple choice. So it'll just look similar to this question here. They'll just choose the correct answer. Bing, I think somebody wrote on the thing. Are you able to? All right, so test design for civics. It is broken into 4 different reporting categories. They're all equal percentages: origins and purpose of law and government, roles, rights, and responsibilities of citizens, government policies and political processes, and then organization and function of government. And there's usually 52 to 56 questions on that civics EOC. So again, back to electronic devices. There are no electronic devices permitted during testing. Students may not have any electronic device, cell phone, smartwatch, game system, etc. on them or within arm's reach, even if they do not use them. That is cause for immediate validation of the test, which I had mentioned earlier. That'll cause them to not get a score on the test, and it could cause the rest of the class to also be invalidated. So there is some resources that you may use at home to help prepare your students for the FSA. The FSA portal, fsassessments.org, was developed as a communication tool by the Florida Department of Ed and contains all published information regarding the FSA assessments and released practice tests. So it is access to the portal and information is public. So on the side here, you can utilize these practice tests with your students at home if you'd like to prepare them more so they can start seeing the questions, that type of questions that they're going to see on the FSA. Other helpful resources. And the contact. So if you have questions regarding testing, you can first reach out to your teacher, and if they don't have the answer, they'll reach out to me so that I can provide them with the answer that they need. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Ms. Feliciano. I just want to take a moment in case anyone has any questions. I know it's a lot of information. The biggest thing to remember are, making sure that students come prepared to test without devices if possible. If they do have a device, they need to understand the importance of turning it off and placing it in their backpacks in the hallway. Also, ensuring that students come to school on time, because we want them to test on their assigned day. It becomes a hassle for the student and the teachers when we have to reschedule because they're not coming. So make sure that you mark the dates on your calendar so that you know exactly when your student will be testing. There'll be a letter coming home from Ms. Feliciano that reviews all the testing dates and just a few reminders about testing. It is a huge deal, not just for the school, but also for each individual student. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either of us. Are there any additional questions that we may have? Thank you, Ms. Feliciano, for putting that back on the screen. So if anybody wants to maybe take a screenshot, take a quick photo of that page. We're also going to post it on our Facebook page, and this video or this session has been recorded and we will be uploading it to our YouTube channel so that you can rewatch it if you need to, and those parents who weren't able to attend are able to watch. So do we have any final questions as we prepare to wrap up?
For those with IEP plans, what type of accommodations do we need to be prepared for?
So that'll depend on what their IEP says. So we follow all testing accommodations that are listed on their IEP. There is actually a section on their IEP that details classroom and testing accommodations. So that the type of accommodations vary per student, but Ms. Feliciano sits down, she looks at all of the IEP accommodations, all the 504 accommodations, and she groups students together so that they are able to receive those accommodations without disturbing any other students.
Okay.
I see a question about the invalidation. So what happens with an invalidation with a phone? If a phone goes off, let's say a phone rings in a classroom, the reason why that can invalidate more than one student is because it can disturb the testing environment, not just for the student who has the phone, but for all the students in the room. And their testing environment has to be uninterrupted, free of distractions. So that's why we don't allow kids to bring their backpacks in. We provide them with their pencils and everything they need to test. They just put all their stuff in their backpack, their phones, they turn them off, and we put it all in the hallway. So that keeps students from, being tempted to look at their phone, to have their phone on. We like to avoid that altogether, but that's how an invalidation can occur is because it disrupts the testing environment. Same as if a teacher's cell phone went off in the classroom. That disrupts the testing environment because it's a loud noise. Students can now become distracted. It could create, talking, laughing going on in the classroom. It just disrupts the testing environment. So that's the reason why that invalidation can occur. So that's why we teachers too, they're not allowed to have their phones, their smartwatches, anything on while they're in that testing room. They are just focused on students testing. It's a good question though. Any other questions? So I think we are good. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Ms. Feliciano, for putting this together. It is a lot of work being the testing coordinator, and she does it very well. And she is, of course, ready to answer any questions you may have that come up after the fact. I do see on there, it says someone asked, is it going to be on paper? It depends on the grade level. 7th and 8th grade students test on computers for everything except for science. And then everyone else tests on paper. So it just depends on the grade level of your student and which test they are taking, because each test has its own separate requirements. So we're going to go ahead and end the session. It will be available to rewatch if maybe you missed the beginning half. And of course, Ms. Feliciano is available for questions, as am I as well. I hope everyone has a great evening. Thank you guys for joining us.